This is the Wealth Junkie Show. Brought to you by CEO Capital Partners, Brendan Dukeman and Will Harvey. Your hosts deliver the daily fix you're looking for with exciting wealth-building secrets and strategies for what's working today. Listen to real-life stories straight from the mouths of some of the hottest, most successful entrepreneurs and financial freedom seekers to fuel your success addiction.
This is the Daily Wealth Junkies Show, and thanks for joining us today for one of our daily shows. Like I said, the Daily Wealth Junkies Show. Again, don't forget to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/wealthjunkies and to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss any of our shows. Again, we got a great guest for you today, and I'm going to toss it right over to Will. And he's going to
Thank you, Brandon. And just so you guys know, Brandon's dog is barking in the background, and clearly it's throwing him off his game.
Yeah, it is.
Tripping
absolutely.
up over his words.
Yeah.
And so blame his dog for that. So today we have Laura Briggs on the show. Laura, thanks so much for coming on. And Laura is a freelance writer, speaker, and author, and she's done 2 TEDx talks. So we're going to talk about all that. But first, Laura, can you give the listeners a little bit more about your background and just how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So thanks for having me. And I started out in a traditional education job. I went to grad school right after college and started teaching 7th grade in Baltimore City public schools, and pretty quickly realized that I did not want to work in traditional education, at least not for 30 years, and try to hang in there for retirement. So I resigned my teaching position and took a leap of faith into working as a freelance writer online. I've been doing that full time for the last 6 years. And a lot of other doors opened up as a result of that. I got to work for some pretty cool companies, do a lot of different things, give some TEDx talks, and then publish my first book this last summer as well. So it's been a little bit of a crazy ride.
Wow, that's awesome. So how long were you in teaching?
I only taught in Baltimore City for 1 year. And then in graduate school, I also worked as a teacher in education for 2 years as well.
I see. So so many people talk about teaching. It's such a what's the word? It's such a safe. You get tenure, you get a lot of benefits that go along with it. It's kind of a safe thing. It's not very high paying, but how come you walked away from that safety and security and the pension that would come down the road and all of that?
Yeah, honestly, it was the anxiety and the stress of doing that job every day. I have a lot of respect for anyone who does work as a teacher, especially someone who's been doing it for decades, because it is a massive amount of work. It's a lot of long days. When the students leave your classroom, that's when the grading, the lesson planning, the parent meetings,
Mhm.
like the tutoring, the administrative meetings start. And so I was pulling like 14 to 16-hour days every day. And I just thought, I cannot imagine doing this for 20 or 30 years. And just what we ask of teachers today is completely ridiculous,
Yeah.
especially in line with the pay. So I was like, this is not going to work.
Yeah, it's so I used to live with my sister, and she was a teacher. She taught first grade for I think 2 years, and then she hated first grade, and then she moved over to 6th grade, and I heard about all the drama and all that. And so what you're talking about, I know exactly about, because I had to hear it, and I was just like, oh, this is so she learned the same. She realized I don't want to do this forever, and she decided to find something new.
Wow. So when you made the decision that it wasn't what you wanted to do, what was on the horizon? I mean, because it's great that you thought that, but it's like, what is next? What is there for you to do?
Well, it was really hard for me to leave that because, like you said, there were some benefits of it. Like you're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, you have health insurance, right? Like there were a lot of like traditionally safe and secure things built into that job. And I probably quit at what was like the worst time for our family. I didn't know what was coming, but I resigned, and then he's now my husband. He was my boyfriend at the time. We were living in Maryland, and he was put on leave without pay by the Navy for a couple of months while they found a position for him. So we went from like a 2-income family to like
Man.
almost a no income family in Maryland, which was just like, I have to do something to find a job so we can continue to pay our bills. Right. So
Yeah.
I just started thinking about every skill set I had. One aspect of teaching I really liked was creating lesson plans and helping students with reading and writing. So I'm like, okay, I can maybe I have enough of a writing background. I can leverage the teacher thing into working as a writer. But was that 100% like a stable and secure job? No, it took me a while to really build that up.
Okay. And how did you build that up?
Well, I started by setting small financial goals for what I wanted to bring in every single month. And so then I would raise them too. I really wanted to see before went full time, like I took another day job in the interim working in an insurance brokerage. And I was like, let's see what I can do over the course of 12 months with this as a side hustle. I didn't want to jump into something that was poorly paid or that had specific seasons where I couldn't count on regular revenue coming in. So I stayed in that day job for an entire year while I was building up my client base and kind of learning a lot of the lessons that self-employed professionals learn the hard way, like who to take
Yeah.
on as a client, who to say no to, boundaries in your contracts and all of that.
Yeah, that and a year relatively, that's nothing. I mean, I
Yeah.
know some people that I'm sure looking back for you that went by really, really fast.
Yeah.
Um, I know some people that do that. I know some people that have side businesses that never end up,
Yeah.
truly pursuing their passion and going into that full time. So kudos to you for doing it that quickly. That's pretty incredible. Can you describe what it was like to cut the cord and jump into that full time?
I was terrified that I wouldn't be able to replicate what I'd been doing. So I saw within a couple of months, I was beating my day job income. But of course, as a self-employed person, you're paying your own taxes.
Mm,
You'd have to cover your own health insurance. So I knew I needed more than that to keep going. It's actually funny because I think my employer could sense that I was mentally checking out
uh,
because I went to go resign and they fired me. Like literally, I had the resignation letter, the 2 weeks notice, and
that's
she fired
funny.
me. And at first I was mad. I was like, what the heck? And then my husband was like, hello, just take the severance and go. Like, you don't have to work the awkward 2 weeks, like just get out of there. So I was like, okay, this actually did work out better. So for me, it was weird to take something that had been nights and weekends only and have that become 8 to 9 hours a day, but it dramatically improved my revenue, right? Because now I was
Right.
only focused on the one thing and it was more flexible for me to like take calls from clients and do things like that. Because when I had a day job, it was very limited as to what I could take on.
Yeah. And so did you that very first day where it was right after you got quote I'm using air quotes, quote unquote fired. The day after that, whatever your first day was doing the freelancing, the writing and all that. What was that like? Was it kind of like, oh crap, what do I do with these 8 hours in the day or these 16 hours in the day?
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, the first thing I did was start to make a list of all the ways that this is going to look different when it goes from like a part-time thing to a full-time thing. So which clients had I told, no, I can't take on more work in the past?
Mm,
Who hadn't I heard from in 3 months that now I could take on their project and let them know that I'm doing this full-time? So I tried to keep normal office hours as much as possible because I saw how tempting it could be to like, oh, I'm only say like, oh, I'm only going to work like 1 to 5. And then like the whole day goes by and I never do anything. And I was so scared of that. I was like, I've got to be able to keep
right.
some boundaries here. So I was pretty flexible, but I made sure that I put in like at least 6 to 8 hours throughout the course of the day, whenever that, tended to work out the best.
That's awesome.
So was there like a moment that you remember, we're going back to the teaching a little bit. Was there a moment that you remember when you just flat out said, I am done, and where you realized that you needed to do something different?
Yeah, there was one day. So I drove across Maryland into Baltimore. It was an hour and a half commute each way
Mm,
every day.
yeah, sounds
Oh,
about
And
right.
not only was that brutal, but like just the scenery around you very much changes when you enter Baltimore City, right? And I taught at
yes.
what was considered a relatively good middle school, but I had to drive through some rough parts. And someone, while I was driving one of these mornings, it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, a guy hit my car. He pulled out and hit my car. So I tried to do the right thing and pull over, like, let's exchange insurance information. he was either on drugs or just crazy. Came running down the street, tried to get in my car, was screaming and cursing, like tried to follow me. And I was like, I'm done, and like I saw like all kinds of stuff on the street driving into work. Like
Yeah.
you would see actual
Wow.
dead bodies and stuff. And it was just like, that was it. Just that particular day, like going into the school, I was so shaken up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just left the scene of an accident. Like, I don't know if there's legal recourse on me for leaving, but I was terrified of the guy. And so for me, it was like, why am I continuing to put myself in this environment that from the minute I'm there till the minute I leave is stress, right? And so that for me was really just the clincher point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too. I would have gotten
That
out of
is
there.
that is crazy. It's those
It
Maryland
probably-
drivers. I mean, we're
Yeah.
from we're from Virginia. That's where we live.
They are
There's
the
kind of
worst.
this. We always say
They
that
are.
Maryland drivers are the worst. They always say that Virginia drivers are the worst.
No, I can
So-
say, my husband's military, we've moved and we've lived in a lot of states. We still talk about Maryland drivers to this day. And even if
Yeah.
we pull like a questionable
See,
driving
we're right,
move, we're like,
Brandon.
hey, we're driving from Maryland.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You have that as your excuse.
yeah.
That's funny.
That's hilarious. Well, tell us about kind of the progression from when you got started, and you as I mentioned in the intro, you gave a couple TEDx talks. So I definitely want to talk about that and what got you there.
Yeah, well, what I started to see was that there's a huge demand for freelancers, and I've been fully booked for pretty much all of the last 6 years. Like my schedule's always been pretty full. It's never been like, oh, I have no clients. So I started to see that there was a real demand for freelancers, and also the opportunity to make more money than I ever could have made as a teacher. And so some industries are really open to outsourcing to freelancers. Like they don't even think twice about hiring a virtual assistant or a copywriter for their website. Most of my clients are attorneys, and they tend to be a little bit more old school. They're used to advertising on bus benches or in the yellow pages. And so they're a little slower to adapt to online marketing. But I started to see that even they were coming around and were like, hey, I need someone to do my website, my social media. I want to launch a podcast, whatever. And so I thought, why is no one talking about this different way of working where you control your hours, you have more freedom and flexibility, you decide who to work with and not, you set your own rates, give yourself your own raises, right? And I noticed there were not that many TEDx talks about that particular concept of like how the gig economy is really changing things, because in the next 10 years, we will have more freelancers in the US economy than we will traditional workers. And to me, it's like, that's
Really?
huge. That is a massive shift in the workforce. And like, we're not preparing college and high school students for that. I had no idea that you could make a full-time income as a freelancer. No one would have that conversation never came up in college. And so for me, that
I
was a
didn't
big
know
part
that
of
either.
doing the TEDx talks, was like, I want other people to know that this is not something temporary you do because you're an artist and you can't get a job, or it's only limited to a side hustle, because there's a lot of really talented creatives out there, designers, voiceover artists, web developers, app developers. They're making a full-time income freelancing, and they're choosing to stay as full-time freelancers. So I think that perception of what we look at as a contractor and freelancer has changed a lot.
Wow. When was it that you gave those talks?
So the first one was January of 2019, and then I
Okay.
did a second one in April at Georgia Tech. So they both covered various aspects of freelancing. The first one was called "The Future is Freelancing." Really, like, what does this landscape look like? Why would companies outsource to a freelancer? And the second one was all about basically how we could do a much better job inside education, preparing students for what the world of work looks like when they graduate. Because I see so many college students, they leave with massive student loan debt. And then they're like, oh, I'm not even qualified to get an entry-level job because I don't know this software, or I didn't have the right internships in digital marketing, or whatever it might be. So I think we can do a better job educating people in the teaching professions and in
Yeah.
universities and colleges. Like, let's prepare students for the types of jobs that are in high demand, because we have a massive technical skills gap in this country, where there's so many jobs open that employers can't fill because we don't have people with the right skills.
Interesting. What would you say? Because most people are not. Well, a lot of people are not entrepreneurial, and it seems like this is something that somebody that's very, very risk. They're very, very risk averse would not want to do. So, and you're saying that there's going to be so many of these freelancers. I mean, is there a way to be employed? I mean, you're speaking
Yeah.
to someone who knows nothing. I mean, we have a virtual assistant that does a lot of stuff for our company, but beyond that, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, no, and it's a great question because you're right. Being an entrepreneur and being fully employed with yourself as the boss is not for everyone. But I think what's great about freelancing is if you pick that up as a side hustle or for the
Mm,
experience or a chance to learn on the job, you become so much more marketable to potential employers when you can go to someone and say, yeah, I ran my own business. I negotiated deals. I handled contracts. I got paid. I managed all of the marketing for it. I think when you know that you don't want to be employed by yourself, but you have all those soft communication skills and also the technical skills from whatever software you use. I think employers see that as somebody who's very driven, organized, and is going to be a great asset to their team. So I think it's cool because you can use it either way and you don't have to commit to it full time for it to be something that you enjoy doing. You can be like, you know what, I do this 5 hours a week. I'm in college, grad school, I've got a day job. I build websites on the side because I like building websites. That's a skill you can completely build into, a traditional employment situation too.
yeah, I totally agree with that. And I mean, if you going back to the virtual assistant that we have working with us, she's full time. I mean, she in essence is employed,
Hmm.
unless she's awesome too. So I mean, unless she does something to screw up or just kind of checks out, she's going to have a job. So it's almost like you are employed,
Yeah.
if you're doing that at least. If you're doing the
Yeah.
individual projects, a little bit different, but yeah, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you can set it up to work how you want it to work. So there are some freelancers I know who do have a full-time job and they like their full-time job and they're like, I just need extra money or I'd like to expand my skill set. I don't want to pay to go back to school. Like what online courses can I take in this particular thing and build that up as a side business so that I'm, more creative or have this, project that I enjoy doing on the side. So you can also, like you said, work full-time for one client or part-time for two different clients, and that's what I think is so great about it is it's so flexible and it's very low barrier to entry. Like you don't have to go
Right.
out and take a capital loan, buy a business space, like raise all this money. A lot of online freelancers get started with an internet connection and their computer and like build slowly from there.
Yeah, that's true. Um, you kind of I got a tone earlier. You were saying something about how colleges just they simply don't prepare anyone for this. How do you feel about? I mean, do you think that the traditional university college route? Do you think it's kind of archaic? I want to know your thoughts there.
I think that there's certain benefits that it brings to the table. So I have a liberal arts education, for example, and that taught me to be a really strong writer and a great questioner. So those skills
Mhm.
can definitely play out in so many post grad scenarios. But I think we're preparing students for something that is like what it looked like for our parents and grandparents. Sure, my grandparents could have gone to college, graduated, worked somewhere for 30 or 40 years, took a pension and retired. Our
Right.
generation, we're not keeping one job for 30 years. The company might
Nope.
not even last for 10, right? And we don't even know if we're going to have a pension or social security by the time we retire. So I think like we've got to stop telling students that that's the only way to go because that isn't what jobs look like anymore. And so you have to be prepared to be adaptable, to be savvy, to like advocate for yourself
Yeah.
and be a self-starter to say like, okay, how can I make myself appealing to employers and know that I may want to jump into a different job or different career entirely, or I might be forced to at some point. How am I going to handle that? Like, I think a lot of the traditional securities that were out there for previous generations, they are not there for us. And millennials and Gen Z and Gen X, they know it.
Yeah, it's true. They're in the information age, and you're exactly right.
Yeah.
So Laura, I want to go back a little bit. You
Yeah.
you actually asked this question, and I think you answered it in the TED Talk. But why would a company want to outsource
Yeah.
to a freelancer?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's what makes it such a good time to be a freelancer. So, a lot of companies don't have the budget or the ability to bring someone in full time. So it ends up being cheaper for them once you consider that they're only paying for the work that's being done. They don't have to pay for benefits if they're paying the person as an independent contractor. And then they only pay for the work that's done. And it also expands your talent pool tremendously. Like you guys probably have a virtual assistant who is best suited for the job. It doesn't matter where they live, right? Like you're not limited to, let me go put an ad in my newspaper.
She's in
and
the
hope-
Philippines.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, let me go find somebody who can come into my office every day. Then you have to have enough work for them to do every day.
Right.
It's so much easier to just say, okay, I'm expanding to the world, like whoever is the best candidate for this particular position. And then you can work with the most talented person. And I think companies are really starting to embrace that and seeing that it can benefit them to do that versus a full-time or even a part-time in-office employee.
That's so true. We've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
So where do you advertise your services? Let's say for somebody who's just starting off and they're interested in freelance, they got some skills that they think that they could offer. Where could they go to kind of advertise their skill set and their time?
So the first thing I would do is immediately make your LinkedIn friendly towards the fact that you own a business. It doesn't matter if you haven't sold $1 worth of anything yet. Go put that on your LinkedIn that you are the CEO and founder, chief marketer, whatever you want to call it, of your own business, and then list the services that you offer. So that's one, because recruiters often use LinkedIn to find full-time remote employees and also to fill freelance roles as well. And then I use the biggest job board site in the world. That is Upwork. They post jobs. The clients actually post the job. So the clients are sort of pre-sold. They know they want to outsource. They just need to find the right person. It is a very competitive atmosphere because you're going up against other freelancers bidding on the same job. But even if you're at the research stage thinking, is freelancing right for me? It can be a really great way to see how clients talk, what they're looking for, what software are they asking you to be familiar with. So you can start to, get confident in the lingo and the types of things you need to learn.
Yeah, very good. That's we use Upwork, so
Yeah.
we're very familiar with it. It's very user friendly for
Mhm.
us, and I imagine it is for on the other side of it as well.
Yeah.
So are you still currently using Upwork, or have you kind of transitioned out of that and did something different?
I will say that it's become less and less a portion of my freelance work. LinkedIn is sort of my number one lead source. It really was Upwork for probably 5 years, I would say. So I do still use it. And I think my Upwork profile, because it's found in Google, like sometimes when people will Google me from something else, that will show up. I don't think it hurts that I have like hundreds of ratings from clients who have said, oh, she's great to work with. Like that never hurts, right? Like to
Right,
find that
absolutely.
information. So
Absolutely.
I like to think of it as like another resume with social proof that lives out there. So I do use it.
Right.
So what's an example of a role that you or a job that you've performed for someone? Can you just give us an example?
Yeah, so a lot of what I do is writing blogs. My goal
Okay.
is to help my clients rank in search engines for the keywords that they want to rank for. I mentioned earlier, a lot of my clients are attorneys. So they're in very competitive niches where
Mhm.
when you Google car accident lawyer, Columbus, Ohio, they want to be number one for that. So it's sort of my job to help map out their content marketing strategy. What do we blog about? What pages do they have on their website? What do we link to? How do we use pictures and social media to support all of that? So that's a lot of what I do. And that gets back to this whole idea of like things looking different than it did for our parents and grandparents. So many jobs today did not even exist, right? Like 10,
Right.
15 years ago, like virtual assistant, like
Yeah.
Crazy.
blogger, like they're just stuff. It's like YouTube video editor. It's like this stuff has all emerged as part of the new economy.
Yep, that's right. That's right. And
So how does one get the opportunity to have a TEDx talk, or do you apply for it? Do you get nominated? What's that like?
It's a little bit of both. So I was very intentional that I wanted to do it. So I applied, I put together like an application package and
Mhm.
then applied anywhere that I had a connection to the potential audience. So anywhere I lived, went to college, like anything like that, where I thought that might help me, and some TEDx events actually look for very diverse speaker sets. Like Georgia Tech was like, yeah, we want speakers from different states and cities. So I applied, and it was just radio silence for the longest time. And I worked with someone who'd landed 4 TEDx talks, and he's like, just be patient. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. And I was like, really? Because I'm getting a lot of rejection. And then he's like, the next week I got like 5 invitations, and I was like, I cannot write and memorize like that many. So I accepted 2 and did 2 from there. Cause it's a lot of work to do a TEDx talk. It has to be 100% memorized up to 18 minutes. That was a push for me to memorize something that long, but it was also great experiences. So sometimes people will nominate you, and sometimes you just, go out there and nominate yourself.
I can't even remember what to say in the intro to the show for 5 seconds. I couldn't imagine having to remember what to speak about. But
exactly.
But I guess if you're an expert in the field, and some of it probably comes fairly naturally, even if you forget, you kind of speak about what you know.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So what's on the horizon? What's the vision moving forward?
Well, I have really shifted up my schedule. I do about 50% coaching of other freelancers. So I tend to work with freelancers who are what I call like intermediate level. They're making consistent revenue, but it's not what they want yet, or they're making consistent revenue and they're burned out because they're with the wrong clients. So about half of my time is working one-on-one with freelancers and strategy sessions and coaching. And then I published my first book this summer, and I am getting ready to write 2 more over the next, I think it's 18 months. So
what's your book called?
My first book is called How to Start Your Own Freelance Writing Business. So it's really the book I wish I had when I got started. And it's all the business tips that I have for like launching your freelance writing business literally from scratch.
That's awesome. Where can people get it on Amazon?
Yep. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. There's an audiobook version too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think those books are so important because there's probably not really a book or many books like that in the freelancing world. Is there at least that you know of?
Well, and especially not ones that focus on the fact that like I've never met one of my clients in person, right? Like, so like older versions of these types of books were like, marketing through direct mail, or like you need to have a fax machine in your office. And I was like, no, we can like scrap all that. Like,
they sell those still?
You need an internet connection and a computer, right? So
don't be a dinosaur.
So I tried to really make it like, here's how to do this completely online. So for me, like there were so many lessons I had to learn the hard way. And when I created the book, I really wanted people to avoid those mistakes and to kind of be more informed about who they brought on as clients and how they set up those contracts and things.
Very cool.
So how are you, do you have a coaching program? So you said you're coaching individuals. Are you advertising that? You have like a website that you're advertising that, or you just kind of find them through word of mouth?
It's really been word of mouth. In fact, like we put up a landing page a couple months ago, and someone who was very active in my audience was like, I didn't even know you were coaching. And I was like, yeah, I know. I don't really talk about it. Like usually I bring on somebody and then they're like, you need to help my friend. And so then the friend comes on, and then like a friend of a friend, so it kind of goes like that.
That's the best way to.
Yeah, it really is. Like that's made it super easy, because I also know too, the referral is probably a pretty good fit if they're coming from someone I'm already enjoying working with. So I've started to advertise a little bit more, but it's really mostly been word of mouth.
That's great.
And like word of mouth is extremely important too.
Yeah.
So, well, Laura, we're going to hop into our Moments of Truth segment here. It's the same 7 questions that we ask all our guests, and I'm just going to kick it off with the first question here. Who is your success role model?
My success role model is another freelance writer named Yawanda Black. When I first got started, I read everything on her blog to teach myself, and she's really built up a very sustainable, location independent freelance writing and information product business.
Very cool. Have you reached out to her, spoken to her, met her at all?
Yeah, we actually collaborate. We sell 2 of our courses together, and I've written on her blog and she's written on mine and stuff. So it's been cool to kind of see how that relationship has changed over time.
Very cool.
That's great. What's your biggest success so far?
Oh, my biggest success would have to be, my biggest project ever was a $50,000 book editing gig that I landed with a 5-minute phone call from Upwork. And I was still
Wow.
I was like, it was so easy. I was like, I'm ready for the next client that's going to be that easy.
Wow.
That
You
is
you'll have to write a
insane.
book on that too.
Yeah,
huh?
exactly.
And have you even come close to finding the next one that's that easy?
I have a lot of clients on retainer. So like
Okay.
over time they build up to that amount. But as far as like someone being willing to part with that much money over the phone to essentially a stranger, no, that guy was just like oil and gas tycoon. I guess it wasn't a big deal for him. He was like, yeah, whatever.
You need to ask him
I
to
know.
refer you to all his friends. And,
Exactly.
you
There's where I
know.
need the word of mouth, right?
Exactly.
That's great. So I know you kind of walked us through some of your days, but what does a typical day for you look like?
So I spend about 80% of my freelancing time working on client projects. The other 20% is marketing and administrative stuff. I also coach all of my one-on-one clients through the voice app Voxer. So they will just literally drop me like 2 to 5 minute messages. Hey, this is what this client said, or I don't like this contract. Can you look at it or help me with this thing? So that way it's really flexible. And I usually check that 2 to 3 times a day. And then I'm just working on other projects. Like I have a Facebook group. I'm working on books and stuff. So I keep relatively consistent office hours, but what I'm doing day to day is usually pretty different.
Wow.
Let me add, the Facebook group that you have, how much value do you think that has brought you and the people in the group?
I think it's been instrumental for me to see the need for the kind of help that's out there, and also to vet ideas, because before I create anything, I'll be like, would you guys like a course on advanced SEO writing? And if only 2 people respond, I'm like, great, I'm not creating that. But if it's the other way around and people seem interested, I also think that me consistently showing up and being on live video, like people don't buy from you the first time they see you, right? Like sometimes it takes 10, 15 times where they're like, I want to work with that person. So for me, it's been really helpful to build that up and to have this ready and willing audience of freelancers that it always provide me, like they're always posting questions. So I always know what that group of freelancers is struggling with. And that makes for great blog material, podcasts, chapters in books, etc.
That's great.
Yeah.
What's your favorite quote?
So my favorite quote is from my childhood hero, Annie Oakley, who was a famous female sharpshooter. And it's aim at a high mark and you'll hit it. No, not the first time, maybe not the second, maybe not the third, but keep on aiming and keep on shooting, for only practice will make you perfect.
Oh, that's really
I
good.
like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one definitely means a lot to you because you remembered that's a long one. So you definitely remember that one means a lot to you.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was nothing compared to you memorizing the TED Talk though.
Oh yeah, that was a stretch for sure.
So what are some of your hobbies?
So I have been a tap dancer, which is kind of like a lost art. I've been doing that like most of my life. My grandmother and great uncle were professional tap dancers and teachers. So it's a family tradition. And my husband and I have recently relocated to Minnesota. So my hobbies are about to become all activities, outdoor, winter, cross-country skiing, ice fishing.
Building igloos.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
It sounds like a great time. I'm sure it's beautiful. I've never been to Minnesota, but I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, we're going to try to make the best of it.
Yeah, it's going to get chilly. What's the best business book that you've read?
Oh, it was one I read recently, and it's by another freelancer named Paul Jarvis, and it's called Company of One. And it's basically an argument against scaling your service-based business just for the sake of scaling it. It's more like, how do you build an intentional business rather than just like growing for the sake of growth and burning yourself out and stressing yourself out in that process.
That's awesome. Interesting, because that does kind of go against the grain. Most businesses say scale.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So the last question here: if there's one key piece of advice you could leave our listeners with about achieving success, what do you think it would be?
Get used to hearing the word no and don't take it personally. I've lost track of how many people have said no to whatever thing, right? Like I got rejected by so many literary agents, TEDx events, publishers, clients, you name it. But I think if you like view it as a learning opportunity and try to figure out, was it just not the right person, or was there something I could do better here? Ultimately, you can increase your conversion rate for whatever you're working on by just being like, okay, it's a no, like I'm one step closer to my next yes. Here's what I'm going to take from that no to make myself better.
Yeah, there's actually a book on that. It's a fiction. It's based on a story, but it's called Go for No, and it's a short book. It's really good. It's all about this sales guy, and he's tries to get no's.
Yeah.
And that's he's more successful than anybody in the company. And they start having awards based on him where they the person who gets the most no's during a sales
I love
stretch
it.
is rewarded. So
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool.
So Laura, how can our listeners get in contact with you if they need, look for coaching or,
Yeah.
just really anything?
Check out my website, which is betterbizacademy.com. That's where all of my videos, and I also have a podcast called Advanced Freelancing. That's there. And then you can find links to my Facebook group and all of that good stuff.
Awesome. And then what was the name of your book again?
It's called How to Start Your Own Freelance Writing Business, and it's published by Entrepreneur Press.
Got it.
Okay. And then you said you've got 2 more coming out within the next 18 months?
Yep. We are pending
Great.
signed contracts, but yeah, it's looking
Nice.
pretty good.
So
Guys, be on the lookout for that.
Yeah. So late 2020, early 2021?
Yep. We're October 2020 and then spring of 2021. So
Wow. That blows my mind that we're reaching those numbers, but
I know it's
Yeah.
crazy.
so,
It's wild.
but Laura, we appreciate you being on the show today. You got a unique skill set, and I think you provide a lot of value for our listeners. And
For sure.
we appreciate you being on. And for our listeners, don't forget, subscribe to the show so you don't miss any of our daily shows. And also join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/wealth-junkies. Again, Laura, we appreciate you being on with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Laura.
You've been listening to the Daily Wealth Junkie Show, brought to you by CEO Capital Partners. CEO Capital Partners works with business owners and executives to build passive income through multifamily apartment syndications. For more information about how you can invest in quality multifamily real estate assets and build significant streams of passive income, visit us today at ceocapitalpartners.com.